key message. Recent economic data and the PBO's updated survey of private sector forecasters suggest a further significant deterioration in the outlook for the Canadian economy relative to budget 2009 fiscal planning assumptions. The plunge in commodity prices, the plunge in oil prices, but other commodities as well. And that's reflected very much. It's really picked up in the gross domestic income price.
A little bit of editorializing, if I can make a comment. You said the GDI numbers plunging. Not sure if an economist needs to use that harsh language, but that's your decision.
This is definitely a global recession. They call it the Great Recession. It's unprecedented. We're seeing the world economy actually decline in real terms on a year-over-year basis. So it's just, I think as Paul Krugman says, this is a situation where sometimes bad things happen to a good economy, and Canada is a good economy. So it's definitely a worldwide phenomenon.
So why wouldn't we, as if your job's to look at what's in the budget and whether it's accurate or not, I don't think it's to comment on whether it's good policy or not.
Correct.
Right? Like,
correct. If
we had nothing in the stimulus pack, if we didn't have a stimulus package, you couldn't come here technically and say.
The premium should really be on making sure that that stimulus is implemented.
Right.
But the situation is worse right now.
The issue of, you show us the GDP against the U.S., how come you didn't show us any of the positive stuff that Canada is doing in comparison to? Like, we're in better shape. Would you not agree than we are than our American friends on a number of issues, whether it's mortgages, failure rates, all those kinds of things? Is there a reason that you only show us the sort of the negative and not where Canada is better than others?
Actually, we're pretty much focused on those headline numbers that the government of the day would be focused on as well, in terms of what it means for the overall for the Canadian economy, what its implications are for the fiscal situation. If you asked us to kind of to comb the numbers and looking for the most positive kind of indicators, there are some positive indicators, sir. We saw a jump in retail sales in January, but mind you, was after a very steep decline in December. Motor vehicle sales as well strengthened in January relative to where they were in December. We can look for those things, and the markets certainly have strengthened, sir, in the last number of weeks.
My last question is a budgetary question to the budgetary office. The revenues that we project in there are projections, is that not correct? Whether they're corporate, personal, those revenues that are based in the budget are projections. Is that correct?
Correct.
So the sale would you agree that the government of Canada owns more than $10 billion worth of assets?
Absolutely,
right.
sir.
So it's a projection of what we could, as part of the budget, part of the revenue stream. Part of that is a reduction in wasteful government spending. Part of it is in reduction of assets. But they are all projections. Would you agree with that then?
That assets, that the projection that
those are all
revenues will be forthcoming from asset sales?
Yeah, that's just a projection of what they've put out there. Now, you did make the point that they didn't show you, and they haven't shown me, what those assets would be.
Correct, sir.
But then you made the statement, and I don't mean to be rude, you made the statement that you didn't think it was prudent or achievable or something along those lines. Shouldn't the answer been, well, based on the information I have or don't have, I really can't comment on that because it is just projections, as is the corporate revenues, as is the income tax revenue, or the personal tax revenues, and all the other revenue streams that are indicated in the budget.
Well, so on that point, I think when the government introduced measures, as it did in its 2009 budget, it introduced tax reduction measures. Those were instituted. There was a Ways and Means motion, so they were implemented. Canadians will benefit by those sorts of sales. We know exactly what they're doing. What we don't see, we've seen a global number in asset sales, but we haven't seen the list, sir. That's really what we're calling. Okay, we made that point last year, sir.
Monsieur Menzies disait qu'il y avait un...
Mr. Menzies said that there was a single document that was from Cabinet, and you're saying that there's more?
Nada.
Please remember, Mr. Page, that I went to bat for you after the last session and to clarify that you were getting the information that you had requested. And I have confirmation that up to that point, you had received everything that you had requested. And up to this point, there's one document, and I realize that you folks are esteemed economists. You say that you don't think it's cabinet confidentiality, and I didn't say it was a cabinet document, that this would breach cabinet confidentiality, but we have legal opinions that say it would. When a member quotes a document
we can ask him to table it, to bring it before the committee. Mr. Menzies has just mentioned that he possesses a legal opinion. I think that for the benefit of this committee, the least that he could do would table that legal opinion. It would be good for us to be able to look at it.
I have verbal confirmation right now, and please forgive me, I don't have the document in front of me. I'm just trying to clear the record,
another meeting.
Thomas.
Another
just trying to clear the record. I'm not making a partisan comment here. I'm just trying to make sure that this is accurate. Thank you.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, I want your ruling on my point of order. I'm allowed as a member to ask anyone who cites a document to table it. He says he has a legal opinion. Now he says he doesn't. But if he does have a legal opinion, verbally, maybe he could have it confirmed in writing, and he can table it before this committee so we can all know that whether or not that opinion says what he says it says, even though it doesn't exist.
Mr. Menzies, do you want to respond?
I would be glad to do my best to provide that to you, Thomas.
Okay.
If I can continue.
Thank you, Mr. Menzies.
Mr. Mathieu had suggested that your office had asked for corporate profits, wages, and salaries. My understanding is that was never requested. My understanding is also that you put all of your requests on your website, and that is not on your website. So we have at least a difference of opinion here.
And sir, if I may, Chair, if I could just ask Chris to briefly to deal with the information issue, because the question was raised earlier.
Okay, thank you. The data that we requested, we provided a list of all the series that we needed in an attached spreadsheet, both for the fall economic and fiscal statement as well as for budget 2009. And the projections that we requested, so the mnemonics for all these series are available. We have a good knowledge of the macroeconometric model that the department uses to do forecasting, and indeed we've used it ourselves in our past jobs there. So that information is provided and very detailed. I think there are over 100 series that are being requested. But we are requesting the status quo basis projections. So this would be independent or excluding any measures that might be considered at that time. And I would just, on the cabinet confidence issue, these are projections that are shared with the Bank of Canada, they're shared with the OECD, and as Mr. Page has suggested, they have been provided to private sector forecasters in the past and published in Department of Finance documents.
Thank you. Maybe I could pursue this question of information a little bit. I find it hard, as was just referred to, that a document could be considered a cabinet secret and not be provided to you when that same information is provided to private sector forecasters. That's a little bit difficult to understand.
We would be able to do a much better analysis if we had raw data.
I accept your information here, but I'd like to turn that around to the average everyday citizen and how this recessionary situation affects them.
But the job losses to date are already quite significant.
What are you talking about?
Go ahead. High-risk initiatives. Did you get the question?
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry, could you...
I'm just reading your writing.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Page 2, under Section 1, it says, depending on which information gaps remain after the second report, my staff may begin a more detailed assessment on potential high-risk initiatives. I don't know what you're talking about in terms of high-risk initiatives.
Oh, okay.
What's your definition of a high-risk initiative that's outlined in the economic update or economic plan?
The perspective that we would take, and again, there are almost 100 measures that were put through the Budget Implementation Act. Some of them, for example, like infrastructure, we've known in the past have had high lapses. We may, relative difficulty in order to get the money out the door, into shovel-ready kind of projects that would have an impact. That might be an example where, based on indicators of money flowing, that this is a high-risk initiative. It wouldn't have we wouldn't be getting the money out the door in a timely way.
The risk of it not happening is the high risk. The better potential for it not to happen.
Correct, sir.
Is your definition
Yes.
of high risk.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.